Hey, so what if I told you that you were owed $1 billion? Well, the reality is, if you were a resident of the state of Florida, if you live in a city, a county, anywhere in the state of Florida, you are owed some portion of the, I don't know, $1 billion or more that's owed to local government. Now, I've spent the better part of the last decade going out and working for cities and counties on your behalf, collecting money that is owed to you. Every single taxpayer in every single city, every single county, all across the state of Florida. This is deadly serious. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. There is at least $1 billion that's owed there to cities and counties all across the state of Florida. And I have perfected the process over the last decade of collecting that money. In the cities and the counties that I've had the privilege of working with, I have transformed those cities. I have collected that money. I have returned it back to taxpayers. Profoundly successful enterprise over the last decade. There's a call to action in this video here, and the call to action is this. Pay attention, listen to the facts that I'm going to share here. I'm going to support what I say, and then reach out to your city council member, your mayor, and then ask them, why are we not doing anything to collect this money? I'm dead serious when I tell you that this money is sitting there easily collectible for every single city, every single county. And when that money is collected, it is absolutely transformative for that community. I'm going to educate you here, and I'm going to implore you in this call to action. Take this series, share it with your city council, share it with your mayor, share it with your city manager, and ask yourselves, why are we not doing what cities all across the state are doing, and why are we not doing it with passion, with enthusiasm? All right, here it goes. Take a look first here at this article. It's in Florida Trend. It was in February of 2022. This Florida Trend article goes into great detail describing how way back in 2014 is where I started thinking about this. Wow. And a mayor sat me to work, and we started going through this here in good old St. Petersburg. We had a list of hundreds of properties in this community, and they were vacant, they were abandoned, and we set about the work of getting this property back to work for this community. And here we are, more than a decade later, and I can tell you that that area in which those vacant, abandoned, blighted properties were concentrated is one of the most thriving, energetic, economically active, vibrant areas in our whole community. And when we started that work more than a decade ago, that was a rough area. That was an area that had suffered economically in a variety and very specific ways. But this article is fantastic because it details here how all of these lots that were blighted, all these houses that were abandoned, were forgotten about. But we got to work on that. And in this article, it specifies how we collected $4.4 million in money that was given back into the community. And as you fast forward through this article, they were not just vacant lots. These were houses that were just waiting for someone to take them and get in and rehab them and get a family in there. And in fact, that's what we do. We went through that inventory and we got those houses back online, and families are now living in there. Pay careful attention to this article. Read it carefully and look at the detail that's described within here. One thing that I really encourage people to pay careful attention to is one of the boxes down here at the bottom. This is the other side of the story. While in St. Petersburg, we worked really hard to collect that money and to turn that money and to turn all of that neighborhood into economic development and vitality. The next side of it was in Pinellas County, the larger county. I worked hard, public records requests, and meeting with county officials, begging them, please do what St. Petersburg had done, and let's get this county and these vacant lots all across the county to work. Well, in this article, it specifies that at that time, they identified $300 million in liens. And this is what's so important. This article specifies that $300 million was owed to the taxpayers of Pinellas County. Pinellas County should have done exactly what St. Petersburg did, and that was understand where those liens were. The vast majority of that stuff is piled up against vacant, abandoned, and blighted properties. And the fundamental proposition that I have is that the local government entity, the county, the city, has an absolute duty to return that money to taxpayers, to understand where that money is owed, and do a responsible job of local government to put this money back into the hands of citizens. Now, the vast majority of this money is owed to the taxpayers that live in every community, and it's owed by big corporations, out-of-state corporations, foreign corporations. These corporations have properties all across this state that just been abandoned and forgotten about. They don't care. And so why is it that our elected officials are not doing the job to collect that money? I'm telling you, they have an absolute duty to. And the good news is it produces such unbelievable, incredible economic results. So the call to action in this series is collect that money, identify the liens that are owed, and then go about the easy work, the important work, the essential work of collecting that money. That's what the call to action is. So the next article here comes from Manatee County. The headline on the article reads, residents owe Manatee County $26.3 million for code violation and fines. Remember that prior article in Florida Trend? Florida Trend said Pinellas County had identified $300 million. This article here says Manatee County is owed $26.3 million for code violation fines. Pay attention to this article here. Understand that when they go through this effort of identifying each of these individual properties within here, every one of those properties and every one of those fines are lawfully entered fines that are owed to the taxpayers of Manatee County. So the question for any citizen of Manatee County is, why are we not going forth in the effort in collecting this money? There's an absolute duty and an obligation to collect this money for taxpayers. And if you're a next door neighbor, one of these properties that's identified in here, 1720 28th Street Court, Palmetto, you're living next to this house. By virtue of the $1,412,000 in fines that are up against there, you want that property to be taken care of. You want something to happen with that. And this gets back to this call to action for local officials. They have to do the important work of collecting this money, getting this property back into effective and productive use. Next article, Orange County. Orange County property racks up more than 90,000 in code violations among neighbor safety concerns. I could literally go county by county, city by city, and identify one property after the other and which fines are owed. As taxpayers, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, collectively millions of dollars, to send people out there to take care of properties. And if you're living next door to a house that's got code enforcement violations over and over again, totaling millions of dollars, you want that property taken care of. And we have a duty as citizens to demand that our elected officials go about the important work of collecting this. It's not just about collecting the money. Frankly, collecting that millions, collecting that billions is ancillary to what's the most important part of this effort. And that is revitalizing communities, revitalizing entire areas so that that work, so that that neighborhood can be revitalized. And when you think about neighborhoods, particularly in our city cores, Orlando, Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville, you can identify entire areas that are blighted. And the reason why the blight exists is because we haven't done enough work to get in there and clear those properties and get these properties back online. But one thing I promise you, if cities, if counties, if elected officials did the job of clearing those properties, of identifying where opportunities exist to revitalize communities, We would have opportunities for young people to have homes again, for middle-class people to come into neighborhoods and have homes. Yes, there is an affordability problem, and I promise you this initiative, this effort that I have developed over the last 10 years is the solution to the affordability problem that we all face. There is simply no excuse for why elected officials all across this state are not engaging in the important work of collecting this money, getting these houses back online. And now more than ever is the time to do this critically important work. The call to action is this: share this message with elected officials. If you watch this video and you see that it's important, do your job. Share it with your city council members, share it with your mayor, share it with everybody, and make sure that they do the important work of collecting this money.